about stress, especially stress related to financial issues. And to talk more about that topic and more, I'm happy to have with me in the studio Dr. Myrette Sekkari. She's a wealth as well as stress and happiness coach. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Doctor. I'm talking about stress. Well, definitely the economic status in general right now will be one of the most important challenges to face. And definitely all of the people, they are under pressure actually. So you said that we can deal with this. How can we deal with this?
In order to deal with anything, you have to understand how it works inside you, and then you can take the steps to help yourself with it. So today we're going to talk about like what is stress and why are we so stressed. And as you said, stress is, actually stress is the latest research in the States at least. Over 80% of people are stressed due to money issues. So it's a big stressor for the world, a wild world. Yeah. Here in Egypt, of course, we are facing a lot of issues with money. And part of it is because people don't understand money. That's another issue that we could talk about one time. They don't really understand how to handle money, what is money all about, and how can they really create the life they want with the money they have.
Doctor, that's quite interesting. You're now also starting to define wealth and money and how to deal with it. So would you tell us more about that, please?
First of all, to have wealth, you have to start with money.
Yes.
You have to understand money. Anybody who has created wealth definitely understood money. Mm-hmm. And that's the first step. So the first step is to understand what money, how to handle money physically from the outside, like with the numbers. And you have to also do the inner work. You have to believe you are worthy of that money. You have to do a lot of inside work so that you can create that money. So the physical stuff is like, number one, living within your means no matter what. This is so important, what some people don't get. You have to target every day of your life to live within your budget, your means. Because people, when you get used to living outside of your means, it can go out of hand.
But just allow me, let's be logic, because the most important part now that people, they are living within their needs. But the point is that the prices are far beyond their needs now. So now you are forcing people to live in another standard away from their own standard. I think this on its own is another stress, because we all know that if you are seeking, for example, you were in a private school or you are in a private hospital, you will never ever be able to go to another public school, to go to a public hospital, to all of these services actually. So this is another sort of stress the normal citizen he is under. Yes. So how can he deal with this?
But this is one of the main reasons people get stressed, because they don't want to leave that means or the standard they've been living in. But in reality, in life, we always have a choice. So the other choice, what's going on, is they're hurting their body with a lot of stress. A lot of people don't understand that stress actually is ruining the different organs inside. I'm doing a lot of presentations and workshops just on explaining what is stress, especially in corporate life, because people don't get how the main response is we never knew it can cause all this. It is the main cause of autoimmune diseases. It's also the main cause of heart problems, high blood pressure, and everything else. In fact, they've just done a research. Under stress, your body cannot heal as fast. So even if you go under surgery, if you're stressed, you can't. So the price is quite high. The price of keeping my child in that school is quite high. And it may not be that I have to leave the school. It may be have something else. Maybe I'll have to sell the car. Seriously, because the point is you have to look at the pros and cons and see what am I doing to my body and is it worth it? Because like recently there was an article about some guy in the States, it happens every day, he was so stressed that he can't meet the mortgage, and he went into heart surgery and a heart attack. So you have to solve that stressor. And because it is the number one stressor, it's also the number one reason for divorce, at least the research is in the US. But I could guess it's the same in Egypt. Of course, it is a huge stressor. So you're right, it is hard, but that is the fact. Or am I going to live for 5, 10 years under such pressure every day? What am I going to do?
Yes. Now, doctor, how can we recognize our stress triggers?
When your body starts, this is a very good question because people are not aware of what's going on in the body. So the number one, when we go into stress, we have what we call the primitive response. You go into, it's because of some kind of fear. So if you're stressed about the money, how am I going to pay the card or the school, you go into fear, like the fear is basically saying what she's saying. Am I going to have to change schools? Am I going to have to ask people for money? What am I going to have to do? When you go into that fear, your body starts to do the physical stuff. So you start learning to communicate with your body. The first thing is you're not breathing as well as you used to. Your breath becomes shorter. Some people start to have palpitations. Some people start noticing they're not sleeping well. And also research has shown if you're not sleeping well, any ailment you get, starting with a cold, you can't heal as fast. Because when you're asleep, that's when the body does the building. So those are like 3 very easy things. For some people, it's very easy to know because they know their stomach goes in knots. Or they know that they become very tense and something happens. Maybe their eye goes or they can't stand their knee. Some people find that they are aware. But for most of us, we don't understand that we go with the first 3 I mentioned. So the breathing, the heart rate, this is a sign that you're getting into stress.
So how can we deal with this? I mean, how can we manage to be in a good state so as we can improve the production, for example? Because definitely, if you are talking about someone who is under stress, who is suffering, because normally when you are under stress, all your body system is not working the way it has to work. So how can this citizen work on himself?
Okay, so the first step, if they're having problems with money, the first step is to actually really do the physical work. The physical work, I mean, understand how money works and actually face the facts. The facts are, I make £10 a month or £1,000 a month, and these are my expenses, and something has to give. Because what's happening, when that's not happening, you are being stressed. It's like a machine. You're putting too much in it, some part of it is going to break down. That's exactly what's going to happen. So you do all the physical stuff. So I advise people to learn as much as they can about what they're really spending, keep track, and they'll be surprised sometimes.
I think the issue is that in Egypt we are not used to the time management or even the management of anything. How to write, how to take a paper and a pen and just to write priorities, for example.
Yes. It's amazing what you said, because the money is like the time. You've got to sit and structure it. So they have to learn a few skills about money, do all the physical stuff. And there's some things that you have to understand about money too. You have to know that it's numbers. Money is all about numbers. So even if it's little increments, they add up. And this works both ways. So if you're spending little amounts of money, like £5-10 here, £5-10 here, just a cup of coffee for 5 is nothing, 10 is nothing. But it adds up at the end of the month. So 10 times 30, that's £300. That's not little money. You start knowing that the little numbers add up, and the other way too. So let's say you're saving only £10. This is for someone's £10 a day, or £1,000. You can multiply it. £10 a day is actually 3,650 in a year. Now that amount can pay you something, can maybe change your fridge, do something you needed to do. And in reality, it was only £10. That's the physical stuff. You need to learn the numbers. You need to understand what it feels like, what the numbers mean. And it adds up easy. And the 3,000, I'm not talking even about being in the bank or even with interest. I'm just saying physically, if you put £10 every day in a little box, you will have 3,600 at the end of the year. Then you need to de-stress yourself. And the number one tool for stress relief on earth right now is something called emotional freedom techniques. Because emotional freedom techniques is actually mind-body technology. It's a way when you tap that tells the body, stop the stress, stop the stress, stop the stress. Because when you're in stress, there's certain hormones that come out, mainly adrenaline and cortisol. And those two are really bad for your body when you're continuously having them in your system.
But how can we force ourselves to stop thinking when already you have commitments, like you have your family and you have to supply this and supply that and all the time you'll have your children or the husband or the wife or the household itself requiring stuff.
So much stuff.
So it's too hard to do that when you're surrounded by demands.
Yes, what I'm saying is you need to at least let the mind think rationally, because when you are in the stress, you are in the fear response, the part of the brain that thinks properly, we call it the rational brain, stops thinking. It doesn't even know what to do because it's in the fear. So I want to calm down the fear using EFT, and then when the system is calm, at least you can start thinking of solutions. We do know, and psychiatrists know, that when your mind is clear, when the rational part is working, you become more creative. You will be surprised what people come up with. I work with money for like the last 8 years. People come up with, oh my God, I could do that. That's not over. Or at least the system calms down, like, what's the worst case scenario? So let me give you some examples from my clients. Okay, I'll sell the house. You know, that's a big thing. I'll sell the house and I'll just rent, but I'll still live in the same level. Because the house will bring me 500,000, I'll pay 5,000, that's a long time of rent. So see what I'm saying? I know it sounds drastic, but that's the situation I'm in right now. If that is my money and I have such expenses, then I can figure out. But it doesn't look, because in the mind, the fear looks like death. See, the mind doesn't understand. It's the same threat. Threat of a death to it is the same as the threat of a huge bear killing it. It goes to, the fear goes to the primitive brain, and it sends to the body the same signals as if we were cavemen in front of a bear. Mm-hmm. You have to calm it down. The only real way, even talk therapy doesn't work, to calm it down is by breaking the circuit, because we are electromagnetic inside. So break the circuit by tapping, and actually the tapping lets something called serotonin go in the body. So it allows the body to calm down and say, it's okay, you're safe, there's nothing dangerous going to happen, and then the other part of the brain starts to work. We have to reach that, and then you become more creative. It's just a 1 + 1 + 1. So when we understand the science of what's happening in the body, we can, and this is a simple, anybody can understand what I'm saying. I'm not really going into science. Then people can start saying, oh, I can't be in that stress. Because also it can start affecting their sleep, and then they go into a vicious cycle. Yeah. Does that help? I'd like to show them how to do tapping for the money issue, if that's possible. Yeah?
Yes,
so let's say you have the school fees or the mortgage or the, I don't know, you have a huge bill on your credit card and you can't sleep because of that issue. What you do is, like, if this is your big issue, you need to tap this daily for maybe 5-7 days until it calms down. And until you start breathing better, you will feel your body, maybe 5-7 days, but you start breathing better, or you come up with ideas. So you would start with, like, even though I'm really stressed because I don't know where I'm going to get the money to pay the school fees, I choose to feel okay. And you do that 3 times. So even though I'm really stressed, I'm going crazy because of this money issue, I love and accept myself, and I choose to feel okay. And you do that 3 times. And then you just take the 8 points, and you can't do it wrong. I mean, you do it, maybe you get 70%, maybe you get 100%. And you start tapping what you're feeling. I'm scared, I don't want to take my kids out, this will be awful, the kids will be upset, I don't know what to do with that money, I have no sources, I really don't know where to get it, and you just keep going around complaining all the fears. Actually, what you're doing is voicing what your subconscious is saying 24/7. You think you're okay, you're working, but your mind in the back is saying things like this. What am I going to do? It's going to be awful, it's going to be a scandal, the kids will be upset, my wife will be upset, everybody will know I don't have enough money. It's talking all the time, and it's sending all these signals of fear until you get that thing to calm down. So I'm saying do this 3-5 minutes a day until you start calming down, and you will be surprised because God has put in us a very nice part that's called the creative brain. The creative brain will come up with solutions. Okay, at least solutions to this issue, and it will come up with more than one. And I know you might be thinking, oh, that's awful for someone to sell their home and live in a rented house or whatever. But in reality, it's much better than the father losing his life. So I had another story that was told to me 2 weeks ago. It wasn't my client, but this woman I was giving a presentation told me this. She said her cousin, who's 36, suddenly he had a heart attack and died, and they recognized that he'd been living for 2 years in huge stress of money because he had 2 kids in very expensive schools, and he was trying to live a certain lifestyle among all his friends. When they looked at the books and what's happening with him, and then friends started telling them, he's been really under a lot of stress. Now, is that worth it to the family? Probably if he had talked about it, he put himself under extreme stress. And of course you can kill yourself. You can send so much poisons in the system. It's actually poisons because it's just all these hormones that are negative, it's called negative emotions, so they kill them. So we don't have to go that drastic, but a lot of us are killing ourselves daily by the stress. And I myself was one of them. It wasn't about money, it was other things, and I got an autoimmune disease. And that's why I talk a lot about how to release stress. Does that help?
Talking about this, actually, Also, the Egyptian citizen, he is not used to talk about his internal affairs or personal issues, actually. So how far can this help, for example, because not all of the people, they are going to seek the help of a coach or something like this. But do you think the idea, you mentioned before a few minutes ago, talking about how can we write down our priorities. Do you think the idea of writing down how you feel with yourself can be a sort of relief for yourself? Or just talking to yourself, just to confront your own self?
Yes, you can do that. You can list all those thoughts also on a piece of paper and tear it up. But you know the tapping, you don't need a coach. It's a tapping itself is a self-help tool. We're teaching
No,
you,
I'm
that's
not talking
why.
about the tapping. I'm talking in general.
No, you can do the journaling.
The priorities and dealing with your budget and all of this.
Yes, of course, he can do that himself. And there's so much available information too. But on top of that, he can take another piece of paper and write all his internal feeling. Nobody will see, like I'm really scared, whatever, and then just keep tearing it up. And if he can tap also by himself in a room, nobody has to hear his ideas. That's why he doesn't have to go to a coach, because tapping is very respectful of everybody, and it is a self-help. So take 5 minutes by yourself and just do it daily. And that's what I tell people in corporate, just 5 minutes in your break, tap that.
Now, would that work with anxiety? Because I think anxiety is a further step more than just stress. And the difference, to what extent is anxiety different in its level of stress than stress itself?
So anxiety, stress, whatever we call it, it's all called negative. For scientists, it's called negative emotions. Yes. Because they have negative emotions have a certain frequency in the body.
But would the level be higher with anxiety than stress, or would it be the same?
When you become anxious, yes. Anxiety means you have a lot of thoughts all the time. That's when you start not being able to sleep. That's when even you might be saying, I need help. You might be seeking help. You tell your friends or you go to a doctor. Because you've noticed that you're not okay. You're just you've reached a higher level. So the stress starts with, like I talked about, it could be your breathing, it could be this, and it could be when you really think about it too much consciously. But when you're anxious, you've gotten into like racing thoughts. Like you're sitting with your friend talking, but it's on your mind all the time. And you start getting into serious stuff. You need help. So we don't want to get there. We don't want to get there. So we need personal care. We need to do what she just said, which is just start looking at your budget and try to target living within your means. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I can't do that. I love when you brought up time, because if you don't have time to go with your friends, you say, I don't have time, and you're not embarrassed. People are embarrassed to say, I can't afford to go to that cafe. I really can't. And not affording means I've opted to use it for something else. I'm not going to spend money on this outings for 6 months. Every week we go out, because I'm paying for a new fridge. There's nothing wrong with that, because you still have the same amount of money you're going to spend. So you just said to your friends, I'm opting out of that, and it becomes empowering. It becomes a choice. You become more conscious of what you're doing. I'm consciously putting money in this. And that's why I'm saying there's lots to understand about money before we create wealth.
You know, dealing with the normal aspects of life in general. For example, if you are talking about teenagers or children, at least they are mature, not the kids. Is it a good idea to let them be involved in the economic status in general? Because also there are many people who do not like to tell their children that we don't have enough money, or we have but we cannot afford this because we have to pay the fees for the school, for example. There are certain priorities that we cannot skip, but maybe we can skip some other luxurious life issues. So is it proper just to include the children or the teenagers with us in the whole situation, or not recommended?
It's highly recommended. It's highly recommended.
And how far they can accept it, because they have also challenges with their friends.
Peer pressure and everything else.
And if not with the friends, with the internet, with all the ads that are surrounding us from everywhere.
But by sharing with them what the reality is, not the fear that it's going to be okay, but we're going to deal with it. You're actually teaching them, because in 4, 5, 10 years they have to leave homes. And that's the problem we really are facing in Egypt. There was a generation where everybody had to save, the children knew that. And then there came a generation, like my kids' age, nobody knows about this thing, that people have savings. They don't understand that. So you have a generation that doesn't understand savings. And savings is like a must. If you want money to be attracted to you, if we're going to talk about energy, you have to have some cash. In fact, you have to have some cash in your wallet. You have to have some cash at home. You have to have some cash. You have to have savings, because that's about respect. Money has to feel respected. That's another time we'll talk about it. But what you said is so important. And everything at its level. You start this at very young. You tell the kids, okay, we can only go twice out, or once a week out, or even every 2 weeks, even if they're 6 or 7. And then you go up. And kids will accept if you let them share in the decision. So what do you choose? We can buy that dress, but we won't be able to do the whatever they're going to eat, hamburger shop. We can do this or that. And as you grow, I think children will become very teenagers. I know there's a lot of peer pressure, but it continues. You have to train them to be able to deal with the peer pressure. We're also, as adults, in peer pressure. I won't tell you the cases. I actually have a relative, far-off relative. They actually sold their home. They sold their cars. And when you look at, so where is the money gone? Frankly, the money has gone in outings like almost every day in higher class hotels. They were totally living beyond their means, on cards, until there came a stop. And it all shows up at one day, and the interest will kill you, and they got lost. They started with the house and then the cars, and they're in a real mess, and that's what they got. Is it worth it? Face the facts early and start dealing with it properly. So I'd like to give an advice today. If somebody has a lot of cards, try to pay some of them off and consolidate. That's the number one step as a financial advisor. Consolidate means bring them in 1 or 2 or 3 maximum. Don't have lots, because that's driving the mind crazy. I have 100 here and 2,000 there, and I have to pay this 5, and it's crazy. Consolidate and make it 1 or 2 cards. I prefer 1. Sometimes people can. They can start with number 1. Some people start with the smallest amount, pay that off quickly, but start closing them off. They're making a lot of internal noise, even if they're small, because the mind doesn't understand small and big also.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Myrette Sekkari, coach, happiness coach as well as coach as well, for this interview. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you.
Well, and by this we come to the end of this segment, but we still have more on Breakfast Show. We'll be back after the break, so stay with us.